Dear students, let us start the discussion on today's newspaper, that is 13th December 2016. The first article, The Essence of Education. In this, we need to understand what is the Copyright Act and what is the provision 50(1) subclause I under the Copyright Act, and then what is the judgment of the Delhi High Court in this matter and why such a judgment has come up. In this case, the Copyright Act is to protect the authority of the producer of the material. And it says a knowledge or a book published is a property of the publisher. In this case, the section 50(1) subclause I, what it states is the published material can be used as part of instruction for a particular course in the university, and it can also be used to write answers to a question in the examination, and other than that it cannot be produced for. In this case, the Rameshwari photocopy shop in the Delhi University, it is producing them or photocopying them as the course materials and selling them. So it means between the teacher and student, an intermediary is doing a business in this aspect. That is what Oxford University Press was talking about. Now, what the Delhi High Court stated is this. Here, the instruction it can be liberally interpreted, and education is a medium that changes the lives of the people. There shall not be any caste, communal, sect, or financial barriers towards the education. So, in such a situation, the instruction can be taken as broad as possible. It means that there cannot be any quantitative or qualitative restrictions on what can be produced and what cannot be produced as a part of the course curriculum. It did not impose any restrictions on how much can be produced. As much as course demands, so much can be produced. That is what is the Delhi High Court has opined. So obviously, what are the implications of this? It is going to increase the access to education and treating knowledge as a property that is going to get ended. On the other hand, the incentives to the publishers are being lost as more and more the material will be photocopied. So Indian versions or Indian editions of standard textbooks are going to stop because of this. So in this case, what we can say is a balance has been missed according to the publishers, and on the other side, the copyright is seen as an obstruction to the social objectives of education. That is how the court has seen the issue as. And the next is beyond the court's remit. It is about judicial activism. With regard to the policy matters, it is purely prerogative of the executive. In Uttarakhand, the High Court has said that in 4 of the districts where shrines are located, gurudwaras are located, alcohol has to be banned for. Actually, it falls squarely in the domain of the policy which belongs to the executive. The Supreme Court has clearly stated that the courts shall resist themselves from imposing their personal agenda in the judgments and also interfering with the policy aspects that related to the executive. But however, the courts are moving out of this. And Turkey issues. Now, if you want to understand the Turkey and going violence in the Turkey, let us say it this way. On one side you have the ISIS, on the other side you have the Kurdistan movement. And in this Kurdistan movement, there is a violent group, that is Kurdistan Freedom Falcons. There is a passive group, that is Kurdistan's Workers' Party. And then there is a political party, mainstreamed political party, that is called as People Democratic Party. Kurdistan's Freedom Falcons, these are responsible for violence, they are aggressive. Now Kurdistan Workers' Party is looking for a passive agitation, and PDP is functioning through a democratic means. All of them are striving for the autonomy or independence for Kurds. And ISIS, it is a violent sectarian faction which also has its roots in Turkey. Now, initially for the geostrategic gains, the Erdogan regime has supported the ISIS, and Turkey has become a global entry point for the supplies of ISIS, for the recruitment of the cadre for the ISIS. Now, there is a two-way war it has to be waged. The first major mistake which it is doing is it is equating all the elements of Kurdistan movement as one single thing and using the force equally against them. And second is, with regard to ISIS, its response is late and weak. Because of this, the Turkey is facing a terrorist crisis or violence through the terror means now. Can be seen as a clear policy failure. Now, not a tragedy but the remedy. It is against the Manmohan Singh's article which has come up in Hindu. So what he says is, what is the argument over here is, during the Manmohan Singh era, the high denomination notes have increased beyond the proportion and they have reached 87% of the total money that is in circulation. Because of this, it has got accumulated as the black money and it led to asset bubble or asset price bubble. Almost 10 to 12 times the assets have increased. Because of this asset bubble, the capital gains have increased and it was calculated as growth of the economy. So, there is a growth which is registered, but this growth did not transform itself into opportunities to the people because this growth is not increased through production but due to escalation of the prices of the fixed assets. So, in this case, what can be stated is this. So, the jobless growth of Manmohan Singh era has to be changed to opportunities to the poor and marginalized. It means the demonetization will remove the high denomination notes and it will curtail the asset bubble and shift the money which has come into the banks towards or as loans towards the manufacturing and other sectors. In that way, the jobless growth will be replaced by the employment related growth or growth with opportunities. So here, a temporary discomfort in the form of loss of growth and employment is for a greater good in the long term. That is what is the author talks about. Now GST regime. So let us see here. Now the BD workers, they need to be brought under the higher taxation, that is around 28% which is being imposed for demerit goods. Normally it is argued that the BD is a poor man's puff and many of the BD workers, these are in the small scale industry and their livelihoods get threatened if the BDs are imposed with the higher taxation. But on the other side of the argument is, the BDs are the major source of smoking for the poor man and the disease caused to him because of smoking is leading to much hardships and financial constraints to him. So in this case, what we need to do is, if we have to keep the poor away from the disease and protect their health, so we have to discourage them from consumption of the BDs. This is through the taxation means. Whatever the revenues we get out of the taxation, we can use them to rehabilitate the BD workers. That is what this article talks about. The Indo-Pacific potential. This talks about in Indonesia and India relations. You know that Indonesia's president, that is Jalo Widodo, he is on visit to India. Now you all know Indonesia is the largest populated Muslim country and also it has a composite culture and it is the largest archipelago between Indian Ocean and the Pacific Ocean. It means there is a strategic location. So to protect its territorial integrity, Indonesia is trying to expand its navies. So India and Indonesia can engage in a strategic security relationship with each other. So the present visit of the president can be taken in this particular light. So already they have declared a common stance on terrorism and issue of South China Sea and also for the defense cooperation, defense ministers consortium or dialogue has been established. So it means wider engagement between Indonesia and India can help the region to become prosperous and balanced vis-a-vis China. And it can also establish a regional balance away from the United States of America. This is what the article is about. Now let's come to the explained page of Indian Express. That is the disability bill. Now let us know, in 1995 we have Rights of the Persons with Disabilities Act and then we have this 2014 bill And now amendments are proposed to 2014 bill, which was introduced in Rajya Sabha. A bill is introduced in Rajya Sabha, it will not get lapsed. Now 2015 bill is an amendment to 2014 bill. Now there is Miss Kaul, Sudha Kaul committee has recommended for change in the 1995 Act. So what are the provisions of this change? The number of disabilities were 7, they were extended to around 19 in 2014 bill. Now they were 21. The mental illness and multiple sclerosis, all these have come under the definition of the disease or disability. Now, acid attacks and then Parkinson's disease, these are also been part of the definition of disability in 2015 bill. And second thing is, in 2014 bill, the disability definition was widened. So similarly, the reservations were also increased from 3% to 5%. Now in 2015 amendment, these are reduced to 4%. And then another part is, we talk about punishment and a definition of establishment. So every establishment shall provide for access. It means they have to remove the barriers for the physically disabled. So in the 1995 Act, the definition of establishment was government. Now the definition of establishment includes government plus private organizations. It means every private organization shall provide for an access for the disabled. And then the punishment for not implementation of the act. So 2014 bill specifically talks about penalty plus jail. But however 2015 act has limited that only to penalty. So these are the differences between 2014-2015 bill. And then let's get into the editorial page of Hindu. The rooting out graft. It talks about 3 acts of India which are not very effective. That is Lokpal Act, RTI Act, Whistleblowers Protection Act. Last year, Whistleblower Protection Act was a question. Now, the Lokpal Act, though was enacted by the Parliament, Lokpal is not constituted till date. The major reason is, in the constitution of the Lokpal, there shall be a member of opposition. The collegium shall consist of Prime Minister, Leader of Opposition in Lok Sabha, CJI. In this case, the Leader of Opposition, it do not exist in the existing Lok Sabha. So the word Leader of Opposition shall be replaced with Leader of the single largest opposition party. But the government did not move it forward. So it is a hindrance for the Lokpal appointment. And coming to RTI Act, more than 1.25 lakhs of the cases pending before the Information Commissions. So it is obviously leading to the delay. And the second is the attacks against the RTI activists. More than 150 cases of attacks were there. Though considering the underreportage, this is a huge number. So in this case, Asian Center for Human Rights has clearly stated that every attack on RTI activist has to be reported and then FIR need to be filed, investigated and disposed within 3 months. And second is coming to Whistleblower Protection Act. The RTI activists can be protected if Whistleblower Protection Act is effective. But the present government tried to dilute the Whistleblower Protection Act. What it did is, it brought it under the Official Secrets Act 1923. It means that if I possess any information, either an RTI activist or an insider to the government, if I have got access to the certain information of the government, then I can be prosecuted for possessing that information. So it means if I blow the whistle, bringing out the corruption, then obviously I can be prosecuted for the information on the basis of which I raised the voice. And second, information concerned with or matters of interest concerned with security of the nation shall not be brought under or is exempted from the Whistleblower Protection Act. It means it is also going to dilute the provisions of the Act. Unless the legal framework is strengthened, the fight against corruption cannot become conclusive. That is what author talks about. The next is open house. Now you know that the parliamentary sessions are open for the media, but the committees meetings these happen in between closed doors. Why? Because most of the cases parliamentary disruptions are due to the members playing to the gallery. Now committees there will be consensus among the different political parties and decisions are taken generally on unanimity because there is nothing called playing to gallery. But the author recommends that if the discussion has to be deepened, we need to make the committee recommendations and discussions also transparent. But however, the very advantage the committees have, that is, a kind of non-partisan unanimity consensus orientation that gets disrupted when we expose the committees to media. That is what my opinion on this issue. Now, coming to India, Indonesia resolved to fight the terror. So, here, so both the countries have clearly stated that all the countries have to stand by the UN rule of 1267 with regard to terrorism, banning on the terror organizations. Cross border terrorism shall not be allowed for. And South China Sea issue has to be solved through peaceful means. And the defense minister's consultation has been established to take forward the strategic and security ties between the country. And then, one China policy is non negotiable. The US and China relations were started during the Nixon era, and Pakistan has mediated the same. The central to this is US agreeing to one China policy. According to this, the China enjoys a sovereign right over Taiwan, and US recognizes the sovereign right over Taiwan and territorial integrity of China over Taiwan. Now the Trump, he wants to bargain this one China policy for a better trade deal with China, which says that one China policy is non-negotiable. And the next thing, the cyclone Varda brings Chennai to standstill. Now, here from your geography class, you need to understand why the east coast is facing most cyclones. And second thing is, the frequency of cyclones has increased over last 2 years. What might be the reason? And also study about what is the eye of a cyclone, how the rain and winds are related to this eye of a cyclone, and what do we mean by the cyclone crossing the land boundary, what exactly mean by that. You try to find the answers for this. Now, coming back to the notes. So, already I have discussed the copyright issue. The fair use principle is violated, but however, Delhi High Court has dismissed that. And then we have discussed about the physical disabilities bill. And then we also have discussed about Indonesia's president's visit to India. And then corruption laws and weakness in the legal framework. These are the things which we have discussed today. And then this notes is available to you at lax.in/civils-prep. Please visit and download the notes over there. And then you can present your answer over there. And if I can find some time, I can correct one or two answers over there. And thank you very much. All the best.